Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Wynonna Earp. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I love that this episode is literally picking up right where season 3's finale left off, and I love the whole situation of Wynonna getting all those weapons ready, and then they're like, "Are you done?" Because I feel like I've been standing here for 2 years. I'm like, "Shut up, you your inside jokes," because it's literally been 2 years since season 3, basically. I love that. I love that. So it's like, all right, they're locked and loaded. They're ready to go to the stairs and everything. But by the time they go to the stairs, like, the stairs are there, and it's like, all right. So Wynonna's preparing to crawl, and I even love that whole thing again. She's like, "Nedley," he's like, "Still not staring at your ass." I'm like, I love that to become more and more of a bit. That's the second time that's come up. Maybe last season was. I feel like last season was the first time that came up, but maybe it actually came up prior to last season too. Regardless, like, Wynonna's going up the stairs and like nothing happened the moment she stepped through the archway. I was like, "Oh, it's not gonna work." And she's like, "Yeah," and she literally just falls. I'm like, "Oh, that sucks." And then like they get surrounded by like these crab creatures, and Wynonna's shooting at them. At some point, Nedley got hurt by them. They go back to the homestead. There's the whole VIDS thing. I thought it was interesting because I guess Nedley noticed it because he seemed like he recognized the name, or maybe I don't know. He seemed like he noticed it. That's why I was like, "Is that something you actually know about?" But he just went upstairs. Because I love the whole thing about like, "Oh, that's kind of an ominous message." You know, that's one way to leave a message. And then Wynonna's like, "Yeah, like, hasn't they ever heard of, like, what kind of damn person doesn't use a pen?" And then we find out that Jeremy's the one that cut that into the wall, and he was like, "Who doesn't have a damn pen?" Because later on it comes about the reason why Jeremy did it is because she doesn't have, he's like, "Oh yeah, like my pen drawer is my knife drawer," because it's like, I'm a demon hunter, why would I need pens around, So, and at the same time, like, whoever it is, it seems like it's BBD, maybe not. Because I love that's been an element that's always been in the background, because the last time we heard about BB, Black Badge, was last season with Quinn. That was the last time it came up, and we know that, so maybe we'd run into him sometime this season too, because last time we saw he was like looking into all of that. But it's like they came to, after everything that's going down, like Purgatory being the hot spot it was of supernatural activity, I guess they were managing to. It is interesting though that they did manage to get like anyone that anyone that hadn't already left town, they got them out of town, which it doesn't seem like they do that in other regards. So either this is Black Badge or this is some other government group entirely, but it's like you almost think it's some other group, because like it doesn't seem like Black Badge cares about casualties when it comes to like making a supernatural spot disappear. Like when something gets too out of control, just make it disappear. So like, I don't think that's, so that's why I'm like, I don't feel like this is their MO, but whatever the case may be, Jeremy, Robin, and Nicole got taken. So I also love like this whole like back and forth between Nedley and Wynonna, because he's got the pads and everything, and she's like, "Oh, these are for, supposed to be for sisters," and he's like, "These are for like," he's like, "See, this, it says heavy flow." And she's like, "Oh, is that why you've been very, like, moody and whatever?" And he's like, "That's very sexist of you. This is you're talking to a single father who had to deal with a daughter who got her period at 11. And he's like, "And I've gotten shot 6 times, so." And then they had those, like, innuendos back and forth. What was it, like, the beaver, the explosive she had, because he was like, "Whoa, should you be worrying about a marital device right now?" And she's like, "No, it's for blowing up beaver dams or whatever." And for him, it's like, "Oh, can your sex toys find a magical spot that's not easy to find, and it doesn't exist or whatever?" And she's like, "It's called the G spot, Nedley." He's like, or like the stairs, and it's like, oh, I love how we're getting our innuendos mixed up. It's like I love that just happening right there. Then the whole thing with Mercedes is so good. It's like, oh, even I'm like, but also like, because that confused me, because I'm like, why the hell are you here? Aren't you supposed to be with Kate? But then we find out Kate's on the train with Nicole. I even love Wynonna being like, "Is that actually you behind that face?" She's like, "Is that really you in there?" And Mercedes is like, "Everything behind the boobs is her." Which is like, I've never heard, that's a very interesting way to kind of go about, like, oh yeah, like, these puppies are, you know, paid for type of situation. But I thought that was that was a very interesting way to kind of like phrase it. I've never heard anyone phrase it like that before. I thought it was neat. But I also love, like, while she's explaining everything, she's like, yeah, Kate was kind of telling me to go, but I was like, no, I'm not going to leave you behind. But then Kate must have, like, used her powers to kind of compel me, because, like, I ended up running and leaving her behind against my body's will. I was like, I love how she has to flip the story to make herself seem like the hero, which is so interesting, because last season she was embracing, like, the whole quote unquote cowardice. She was like, oh yeah, want to call me a chicken shit me up. You know, that's why I'm like, she embraced it last season. So I'm like, why? I guess she felt so guilty with everything literally going down, and it's like, obviously Wynonna explaining everything about, like, you know, it's all done, the curse and everything, but she's no longer the Earp heir, but there's still, like, everything going on. So it's like, they, you know, now they have to find out more about this VIDS situation, and it's like, Nedley still has some of Doll's files he had hidden away. It's like, wait, it's like, under this sofa, he's like, no one sits on this couch, so who cares, you know? So, but VIDS' files in there. The name that popped up, I was like, I'm blanking on already. It was Doll's boss. The one, I was like, oh my god, I haven't heard her name in forever. It's with an L. I forgot. They literally said in the episode, but I was like, Jesus, I ain't heard her name in a hot minute. Once again, the first few seasons feel so far away at this point. So, I mean, to be fair, it's been a couple years, but still, it's just like, I was like, man, I hadn't heard her name in a hot minute. So, but they were obviously all people, like, Dolls knew in the past, so it's like, VIDS is dead, but then it's like, why would Jeremy scribe her name into a wall and stuff like that, you know? So now, you know, Wynonna wants to go, because this potentially could be the only means to, like, finding another way into the garden. Obviously, Nedley's in no condition, but for him, it's like, you know, the fact of the matter is, it's like, no one fucks with our family. I was like, yeah, Nedley, you're the man. And it's just like, I hope you don't die, because he was talking about the fact is that he survived, like, a divorce from a tourist and all this, like, you know, all his times as a cop, like, and just, like, basically literally everything he's ever been through. It's like, I've survived all of that. Like, I'm going to be fine. And part of me was like, you better not die, Nedley. You better not die. Come on. You've literally survived everything so far in this series. Like, you better not die. And Mercedes looking after him, being like, all right, let's go raid, like, the medicine, you know, the pharmacies or whatever, get some oxy and some morphine. And then, you know, we'll potentially get something for you, too. So, which is like, maybe Mercedes will look after Nedley. I mean, at the very least, they'll look out for each other. They're kind of the only ones in town. Doesn't seem like anything else supernatural is necessarily running amok, necessarily. Well, to be fair, there was those crabs, so there's no telling what else came out from that doorway, from the stairs, you know, so there's that. On the train, you know, I love, like, you know, obviously, Nicole is super pissed. It's like, well, Wynonna did kind of, you know, drug her and everything, so she has every right to be pissed. It's like, we were supposed to be in this together as a team. We're a family, and you did that, you know. Especially after Wynonna was giving such a heartwarming thing of, like, oh yeah, like, this, the good thing that it gave, you know, this whole curse situation, it gave her this family, you know, and obviously, like, you know, this whole curse thing also brought in perspective. This whole fight with Bullshar had put in perspective for her. It's like, oh yeah, like, you guys mean the world to me, and I don't want to lose you. Hence why she did what she did. So it's a little complicated, you know, because it's like, yeah, you were kind of messed up for doing it because we're in this together, but at the same time, it's like, you know, it's because you care. I even love Nedley called her out, being like, oh, that's drugging the team, huh? That's a felony. But nevertheless, there's a whole situation of, like, you know, Kate ended up helping her get off the train, which is, you know, still didn't see where Jeremy or Robin ended up on that train, or who else from town is in that train, because obviously it's not just them. Like, a lot, like I said, any other stragglers that were left in town, like Chrissy, you know, Nedley's daughter is probably definitely amongst that bunch and everything. But nevertheless, Wynonna's trying to find that, you know, Black Badge base, was it in Monument, or whatever that place's name is, She runs into. I even love like she was sitting on the side because she was like impersonating Doc and impersonating Waverly, and then she brings up Hot, and then she hears Hot's voice, and she's like, "That wasn't me." And it's like, "Hot, Nicole, give me a big one." And then Nicole like punches her in the face super hard. It's like, you kind of deserve that. And it's like, no more lies and stuff like that. It's like, because it's like, all right, we're gonna go find Waverly. It's like, cool, it's you, me, and Peacemaker. She's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, why would you even lie about something like that? Why not just admit that you don't have Peacemaker anymore? I mean, the last thing we saw of it was it getting turned into a sword, but I guess when it was all said and done, it disappeared. I don't think we really saw what really. Well, I guess it disappeared with Clooney. Like Bullshard, like when he died, like we never saw it like fall from his body after he got stabbed or whatever. So I guess it just disappeared with him. I guess it served its purpose, or maybe just doing that final. I don't know. But regardless of all that, the fact of the matter is they go to this base. They end up getting shot at, and Wynonna has to kind of act as the distraction. And trying to it's like zigzagging isn't working. Turns out it's just a little girl that's shooting at them named Rachel. Very much in a vein of like Wynonna. She's kind of like kind of a bit of a smart ass. And you're just like, she's like, oh, this is like what basically she was saying, like, oh, there's a child abuse. And it, like Nicole was like, it's not if you're like over 16 or whatever. God, I forgot what remark she made. She's like, because it turns out she has a connection to dolls, and then she finds out doll size. She was like, oh man, life is a bag of balls or something, like a kick in the balls or whatever. She said something like that, and I love that Wynonna was like, oh, daddy, can we keep her? Because I was like, because even love at one point, it's like, because like, oh, it's like, you put your gun away, Wynonna, and let daddy handle this. And Nicole was like, oh, that actually does feel good. And it's like, I love that. That's just, I guess that's just going to be a bit from now on referring to Nicole as daddy. That's going to be neat. But nevertheless, it turns out Rachel is Valdez's daughter. Like, she got out before things went sideways because Doll's actually saved her, which all three of them are like, yeah, Doll saved me too. So it's like they all kind of have that connection. But, because Rachel didn't really warn them ahead of time about basically the mutant zombies they're all about, because like the gas or whatever Black Badge had used had an adverse effect. It basically created mutated zombies to a certain extent. So all three of them are kind of fighting their way through. They get separated. Wynonna steps on the grate, which she was told not to do, and Nicole pushes her out of the way, sacrificing herself. It's just kind of. I even love this line where it was just kind of a thing of, it's like, Nicole referred to Wynonna as her best friend. I was like, oh, that's so awesome, because you've never referred to, that's awesome. Because Jeremy refers to Waverly as his best friend, so their besties and your besties, and that's just, because it's like, oh, you're dating her. Because it's not just a family thing, you're besties too. Because I think it's neat, because it's because you could easily just be family, considering the fact is you are dating her sister, and you're engaged to her sister. Granted, you weren't able to give her the answer because obviously Wynonna did the whole drugging you thing, but still, I just thought that was kind of a sweet thing. Especially the way they butt heads so much, it's just kind of neat. Obviously we saw a lot of growth in the relationship last season, especially in that episode where they had shitty luck over and over again, because it was everything related to that gnome and everything, the broken mirror and the gnome situation. So I thought that was so it's just kind of furthering that aspect. I thought was kind of neat, but that's kind of sucky. So there's that. Then we've got all the stuff inside of the garden, which the garden isn't what, because that was the whole thing too. Is it's supposed to be the garden, but there's supposed to be stuff. There's this stuff coming out of it. It's like, so what's so why is the garden like that? Maybe it's the thing of, yes, it was a paradise once upon a time, but maybe because remember. Julian said that he never actually went inside the garden. He just protected it, so it might be the thing of, at one point in time it was a paradise, but something happened. It got so corrupted that it stayed locked, and nothing was able to get out. Whatever corruption happened in there that they were unaware of happened could never get out until now because of Bullshard. Because that's the whole thing too. Waverly getting taken. There's a whole thing too about what about Kevin? what about her and the rest of her people who are just, they watch this stuff unfold? It's like, well, what are they gonna? Are they gonna do anything now that they never made an appearance after? Well, maybe I don't think they did. Cause I'm about to say I was about to say not unless they have some correlation to the people that took everyone to town, but it's like probably not. We'll have to wait and see. But the place ends up being kind of like a desolate, kind of scary place. Doc comes through and he saves Waverly, who's chained up and everything, and he pulls on the chains. And I like that moment of him being like, "It's a whale." Of course it'd be a whale, but he's like, "I am a weapon," and he pulls on it, and there's like this clump of like disgusting, like I don't know what you call it. There's it looks like a sack of flesh or something is on the other end, and I'm like, why was that chained? Why was Waverly chained to that? Because like it was pulling too, and it was choking her. I was like, what's that about? And it cuts back to it for a quick second. I'm like, that's going to turn into something. What exactly? I don't know. I'm like, what? Because that place is the biggest mystery of like, what the hell is? What is that? That side of things is the biggest mystery of like, what the hell is going on? Because Waverly and Doc are kind of lost. They can't find their way out. But then they run into a dude who is, I guess, a black bad scientist, because obviously they were working on a way to get inside of the garden. And he's feeding this machine, and he's like, it needs fresh blood. And he's like, well, we don't really have time to really kind of run through everything. It's just kind of like you kind of jump in feet first type of thing. And he proceeds to chop his head off. And, Doc is like, bring him back to life. It's like, this guy doesn't have a head. And Doc's like, the guy's head's right there. So she tries to resurrect him. Doesn't work. So it's like, okay. So they proceed to kind of hold his body upside down to use his body's blood. It's fresh enough at this point in time. And Waverly wisecracking like, oh, look at you two getting along because they're in a 69 position. But like Doc jokes and it's like, oh, because he doesn't have a head, it's only 61. I was like, okay. But also, like, Doc still got the whole vampire thing, so his thirst is kind of getting the best of him. But what was interesting, too, is, like, it seems like the longer they stay in that place, it almost seems like their memory... For a second, I was wondering if it seemed like the place was affecting their memories, because Waverly was, like, hot with her red hair, her brown eyes. It's just like she had to keep making herself remember, because, like, Doc was, like, kind of passing out, and he was like, Wynonna, and, yeah, hot, and Waverly had been like, she's sheriff. It's like her memory was slipping because for them they were losing track of time. Because even Doc was like, did I make this fire? Was this fire always here? Like they were kind of, they couldn't tell. Like it all looked the same, so it's like they couldn't tell like how much time was passing. But then later on, Waverly goes down there, and there's like 4 books. One's Nicole, one's Waverly, one's Doc, and one's Wynonna's. And we never see who book she grabs. I'm assuming that's supposed to be a thing of, because it's the garden and everything, maybe it has some kind of like thing of like each one of those books are, because it said like choose wisely, they're probably books that are like, oh, kind of like, since it's a sci-fi show, make a sci-fi comparison, it's probably like the library in The Magicians, where those everyone has their books. What if Waverly picked up one of their books? So it's kind of like, it tells you the end of like how their entire life is going to play out. So basically, whoever book she grabs, she knows the end of their story. So I'm thinking maybe it's going to be something of like that. It makes sense why it would be these 4 books because in a sense, I guess these are the like 4 most important people to you, which kind of sucks a little bit for Jeremy, but still. But I just thought that was interesting. I am curious, like, why those 4 in particular, and what significance that's going to play later on with having her taking that book. Because there's also, like, the throne, because she was like, I guess there's some part of her angel side that's like, no, like, it's my birthright. She's like, I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. Because obviously there was the whole thing Kevin said of like, oh yeah, like she'll sit on and become petrified and stuff like that. But they're kind of avoiding her doing that. Because, like, especially the way this whole place is, like, cause we know sitting on it would, close the door. So this way, the doorways might be blocked essentially, but they're not locked, so I guess there's still a way to go in. But then like, Doc went down there looking for Waverly, but found a naked Nicole, which I'm immediately like, that's not Nicole. It's not like Nicole fell in and she ended up there. It's like, no. Whatever's there, I'm sure, because the dude said that it needs human blood, but Waverly ended up feeding it her blood, and I'm assuming, like, and then because, like, Doc wakes up and he sees, like, a tree grew there, it's like, that wasn't there before, it's like, because obviously we saw like some stuff was growing from, like there was like a plant or whatever growing, almost like a lotus flower kind of growing. So I'm assuming whatever this thing is, it manifests itself as Nicole because she was at the forefront of Waverly's mind. It might even have been Nicole's book that was taken. It doesn't necessarily correlate to that, but you know, that's where my mind is. But it's like, I'm assuming whatever this thing is, like either it's the machine manifesting Nicole because of Waverly's blood, and either that, like that's that sack of flesh or whatever. I'm wondering, like, is that, you know, that thing that was in a well, like, is that something separate, kind of its own thing, or is it actually directly connected to this? This episode has a lot of like, what does this all mean? We have no idea. Like, there's so much we don't know, and I think that's going to be interesting because it adds this like heavily ass like mystery element to be like, what does this all mean? Where is this all going to go? Who are these people? Like I said, that might be Black Badge, might not be. This whole garden situation. What happened to Nicole? Because once again, I strongly believe who that is in the garden is not Nicole. So a lot of stuff to keep in mind. I am very, very happy to have Wynonna Earp back, especially, like I said, because we didn't get a season last year. So I'm glad to, you know, have Wynonna Earp back. Interested to see where ultimately this season, where the next episode in particular, ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.